Hey, it's Susan. Welcome back to Authentic Conversations. And if you haven't been here before, then welcome. Very fortunate. It's that time of the month again that we have Chrysanthe back with us to talk about what's happening in the cosmos, what's happening in the stars, what we need to pay attention to notice, to be aware of. It's awesome. Thanks, Chrysanthe.
Well, thank you so much for having me again, Sue. I love coming on, and let's jump right into it.
Let's get it done. So it's Gemini season. First of all, can you tell us, Gemini, what does that represent?
Yes, so we have walked into Gemini season. Gemini is an air energy. It's a mutable air energy. So across all of the zodiac signs, each of them is ruled by a certain element. We have fire, air, water, and earth. Gemini is one of the air signs. So all of the air signs, Aquarius, Gemini, Libra, they all have certain qualities being air. So air represents logic, rationality, intellect. Oftentimes it represents the ability to be flexible to some degree. And when we're thinking specifically about Gemini, Gemini brings a very playful, almost childlike energy. Gemini rules communication. Gemini has to do with how we are conveying a message and also taking in information. So Gemini, when we think of Gemini, we're thinking of technology that would rule communication, but also spoken and written word that we may be doing on our own, whether it be writing a letter or just having conversation out loud with someone over the phone or in person. Gemini also rules short-term traveling. So if we're thinking about taking a trip, but it's not necessarily a permanent move, or just having perhaps like weekend adventures or taking a vacation for like a week, Gemini rules all of that type of activity.
Okay, so we're coming into summertime, right? Summertime months,
Yes.
there's movement, there's warmth, there's energy. And so now we're using that air to kind of push us around a little bit.
Yes,
Cool.
yes. So Gemini is a very adaptable energy. It's a mutable air sign, and the signs that are mutable, they have this ability to be flexible, the ability to be able to shift when needed. If they're in a particular circumstance where they have to be mentally and emotionally flexible, Gemini has that ability. Gemini is not known for being super stiff or rigid. When we think of Gemini, we can actually think of almost like, well, one representation is actually a dandelion. And when we think of the seeds being dispersed and spreading out with the wind, this corresponds with both Gemini and Sagittarius energy. This ability to go with the wind, this ability to be flexible, to the potential to travel, the potential to go beyond their bubble or where they may have been stationed to for some time. So Gemini definitely is going to bring us these opportunities, whether it be physically going somewhere or maybe even mentally traveling. It could be mentally deciding to change our mind on something. Gemini rules adaptability and change, the ability to be different when needed in order to not only survive, but in order to enjoy and thrive as well.
So that's the mutable part, right? They can
Yes.
kind of transform their thinking about things in order to adapt to new changes or new climate or, new circumstances or situations. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yes. Because we've moved out of Taurian season, which is a very grounded, it's an earth energy, so it's very grounded, it's fixated, can be very stubborn, but also just steadfast. So we're moving out of this rooted season to one that's bringing us this air energy of flexibility and adaptability and movement. It's going to be really important for us to think about how can we move. So this may be in a physical way by incorporating perhaps more yoga into our lifestyle, stretching, taking deeper breaths, dance, truly moving our body. But it can also be the movement, as I said, of the mind and emotions, allowing our feelings to visit us, to shift through us, but not clinging on to anything, doing our best to try to be a little bit more fluid this season.
So it feels like freedom, or it sounds to me like that, like we're moving from from kind of a internal tight space to, maybe something that is more free.
Yes, that is exactly it. We're moving into a space of freedom, because freedom, I was reflecting on this actually a few weeks ago. I think freedom is the ability to be able to move with the change, to not cling so much. So I really think that Gemini truly embodies that expression of freedom, because so often when we are struggling, it's because we're clinging on to something, and that could be anything. But Gemini welcomes us to, in a way, be willing to move through that discomfort, and to know that it is possible for it to actually move through us. We don't need to hold on to it so tightly. And with Taurian season that had just passed, it was wonderful in many ways, because we are thinking about perhaps our goals, or in what ways do we want to root ourselves down more and ground ourselves. And those are beautiful lessons and so needed. But in this season, we're welcoming more this ability to let go. And when we let go, we're only going to welcome more goodness. We're not actually losing anything. It doesn't mean that we stop. It doesn't even mean that we have to make a major life change, or that we stop associating with any one thing. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. It could simply be just being open to feeling something differently, and not rehearsing the old thoughts that we've had before, because that mental agility, that mental, just basically, that there's a potential there for us to shift our mind, so we don't have to stay stuck in the same fixed mindset that we may have had for a while. We can be flexible and adaptable, and embody that Gemini energy, and watch how things get better for that and from that.
So is there anything specific in the stars that we should know about? I think that the full moon for the month of May was the 23rd. And then moving forward from there, what should we expect over the next 20, 30 days?
Yes. So for one thing, on May 26th, Jupiter will be moving into Gemini as well. Now, Jupiter will be in Gemini for a while, for about a year, because Jupiter takes about a year to transition into another sign. But especially in the beginning, we can really feel this shift. So Jupiter is the planet of good luck. It is the planet of expansion. Everything that Jupiter touches gets lucky and expands. So when we're thinking about Jupiter being in the sign of Gemini, that means that all the themes of Gemini will be highlighted. So if we're thinking about, like I said, those mental conversations might be highlighted. The ability of adaptability, we're going to receive extra good luck in that area. So essentially, everything that Gemini rules will be enhanced and receive even more abundance through this Jupiterian energy.
Okay, and so Jupiter is so it enters for another year. Explain that. Come back to
Yes.
me. So does it stay in Gemini for a whole year?
Yes. So
Okay.
when we consider the birth chart, the natal chart, we have inner planets and we have outer planets. So typically, if someone is getting their chart read, usually the person reading the chart will focus more so on the inner planets, because those planets will move a bit faster, and they're a bit more specific for that individual. Well, they are more specific for that individual's time and date of birth. So those would be the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. The other planets, such as Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, those planets move more slowly. So people within our birth year, people that were born the same year as you, or even within your generation, will most likely have the same planets to some degree. So let's say someone is born within a few months of you, that person will most likely have the same Jupiter, because Jupiter takes about a year to transition into another sign. And what that represents is that the people born just about like for your year have a collective energy that's very similar. And it's really interesting to take a look and to compare. For example, people that have their Jupiter in Capricorn, perhaps we might see some type of pattern that the people born that year tend to pursue certain social statuses or statuses at work. People with a Jupiter in Scorpio maybe into more esoteric knowledge. We start to see these certain patterns. So now Jupiter will be moving into Gemini, which altogether is like extra good luck, because Gemini in of itself is a very in many ways it has the potential, I should say, to be a very lighthearted and joyful, fun-loving energy. And so when you take that, and then you're also taking literally the planet of good luck and abundance, it's Jupiter is the jolliest planet that there is, and you combine the two, it just spells out good luck. So it's very favorable, and it's really exciting as well.
So that's awesome. So where is Jupiter coming from? Is it coming from Taurus? Was it in, or do we know
Yes.
where it was in Taurus and now it's moving into Gemini? So that would be the natural progression. I'm still trying to, folks, I'm still trying to figure this stuff out. I'm fascinated by it. I wholeheartedly believe that we are connected to the cosmos and connected to the universe, but these specifics, boy, it's a lot to pay attention to.
Yes, yes. Um, so moving into now in a few days, or maybe when someone is viewing this, Jupiter will already be in Gemini. Just start to consider some of those themes. So, for example, if Gemini rules communication, in what ways can I speak up for myself more?
Mhm.
Maybe how can I, thinking about communication, how can I shift my viewpoint of a particular conversation that maybe I've been hesitant or scared to have? How can I shift my viewpoint to one that may have been perhaps more negative thinking, to maybe a bit more positive and hopeful about that conversation? Or at least if I can't do that, at least have a little bit more confidence in myself for having that conversation.
Right.
Um, so we want to see how can we apply this to our own lives. It might result in us considering, yeah, I really want to take that trip that I've been thinking about, and maybe I've been a little bit nervous about that for whatever reason. Well, maybe this can be the time now, and having that Jupiter being in Gemini, having that as fuel to
Yeah.
move forward.
The impetus, the push.
Yeah, yeah.
And so all of this comes from awareness, right? Sometimes we might notice that we're feeling different, we're responding or reacting to things differently, and we don't always know that it could be connected to where we are astrologically, in our own world and in the world in general. So I think that the awareness why we're having these conversations is to just start to recognize that we can use the energy from the universe in different ways to assist us.
Yes, exactly. And ultimately, what's going to also start to happen is, even if we're not aware of those, even if we don't know that Jupiter is in Gemini, those themes are most likely going to come up in our lives. So when we have the awareness and we're seeing those themes, it's helpful because you're putting a name to it in a certain way, as well as you can choose to use it, as you're saying, like as a way to empower yourself. You
Yes.
can choose to say, oh yeah, I can walk into the season and I am going to activate this Jupiter Gemini energy, that. And also considering, where do I have Gemini placements in my chart? So looking there, for example, if somebody has their Venus in Gemini, for example, Venus ruling relationships and pleasure and leisurely activities, they will probably really feel that area of their life being highlighted in some way. Sibling relationships are also highlighted during this time because Gemini corresponds with the third house, which rules siblings. So we're thinking about these different themes and topics, and it can be really helpful to consider, where am I seeing this in my own life?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So you don't have to be a Gemini to take advantage of all of this good fortune and this freedom and this expansion. We all have Gemini in our chart. It's just a matter of where it lies, how it shows itself.
Yes, yes. So those that have, let's say, their one of their planets in Gemini, and let's say it's an inner planet, they may feel this even more. However, if you don't have any major planets in Gemini, you still have a third house placement, which corresponds and is connected to Gemini energy. And regardless of one's birth chart, let's say, oh, yes.
No, I want to take it one step further because I want to say that even if you are not directly interplanetary Gemini related, I guarantee you someone in your circle is. So
Yes.
as you observe the energy of others shifting, it gives you the awareness of maybe why they're feeling so energized or responding in a different way, which actually can help feed and fuel your energy. So, we're all impacted by it directly or indirectly.
Yes, that is a brilliant point. So true. When we start to notice our relationships, especially those in our closest circle, and we can start to reflect, especially if we do know someone's birth chart, or if we do know someone with a sun sign in Gemini, and thinking about how, okay, this is going to be an extra potent time for them, and just having that awareness and being supportive. That awareness, it may sound cliche, but that awareness, that knowledge is really power. So if your friend who has, let's say, their sun sign in Gemini comes to you with their ideas about traveling this summer, and maybe normally you wouldn't think much of it, or maybe normally you may judge it, or whatever the case may be, keeping in mind, okay, their Gemini energies are being enhanced and highlighted at this time, and I can still give my honest viewpoint, but taking into account what's going on astrologically, and perhaps approaching it with a little bit more empathy than we normally would.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So, what else do we need to think about, notice, or the key word is be aware of?
I would say, some of the most important themes that we should notice would be our communication style, and this incorporates so much. How direct versus how passive we're being, and when either of them is the most appropriate, because I think it can depend on the situation. Noticing our tone, noticing more so, I feel, what our reaction is, either during or after the conversations we're having, because Gemini is a very fast energy. At times it can be a bit impulsive even. So we don't necessarily want to perhaps get stuck in old patterns or habits of ways of thinking. So if we're engaged in a conversation, we're taking in information, and let's say at first we don't like it, rather than reacting in an old style, which may be to just be very reactive in that moment,
Mhm.
although Gemini is not known for taking the pause, we can take the pause. We can take the pause and use that Gemini ability of integrating information, oftentimes very quickly, and be adaptable in our response. Maybe it can be, you depending on the situation, of course, but maybe it can be something as simple as saying, I'm going to need a little bit of time to think about that and get back to you. We often don't realize that in many cases, and again, it doesn't apply to everything, but in many cases we do have that ability to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 times, we have an opportunity to step away and not respond from the gut emotion, and to pay attention to all perspectives and all circumstances before we, make a decision on something. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. And being able to see multiple perspectives, because Gemini has that ability, again, with that fluidity and
Yes.
flexibility, to be able to see beyond their way of thinking. So to try to understand diverse aspects in any situation, what the other person's thinking, what factors are involved. All of that is not done in vain. All of that actually benefits you, the individual, in the long run. And it helps, I feel it also helps to take out needless suffering, because oftentimes there's all of these little moments of suffering that accumulate because of judgments that we have. And oftentimes it comes from our interactions with others. So if we can utilize that Gemini energy of flexibility, of seeing beyond our perspective, we can
Yeah.
start to see that maybe even our relationships get a little bit easier, and we're not clinging on so much. We're not clinging on to the past. We're not clinging on to these ideas that we have. But we can see things more for the way that they are. And, in the long run, perhaps it can go a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah. No, we're all about alleviating suffering, and suffering is created inside one's own mind.
Yes.
The
Yes.
stories that we tell ourselves, which, may or may not be attached to truth, we get to decide that. Whatever truth it is that, we're attaching to becomes our perception of our reality. Yeah, okay. Food for another thought.
Mhm.
Conversation for another day, but it's all interrelated. It is. And if you can have the flexibility and the mutable qualities, or tap into, that energy in Gemini, and be able to rework the story in your head to give yourself a more favorable outcome, then, you have the ability to do that. It's
Yeah.
just the awareness and understanding about how to do that.
Yes. Yes. And that choice, that decision that we make, even if it's in a split second, like, oh, I can choose to do things differently this time. Even if it doesn't feel so easy in the moment, I can actually let me try it, because
Yeah.
Gemini is very open to trying, whether it be trying new, I mean, the energy itself. Not necessarily everyone with a sun sign in Gemini is going to be this way, because there's so many other factors, but the isolated energy itself is open to trying new ways of being and new things. So why not start with our thoughts?
Yeah, reinvent your thoughts, reinvent yourself. Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
So super exciting. Anything else happening up there this month that is of notable value?
So we will be having a new moon in Gemini soon. From about the time that this is published, I would say in about a week or so, we're gonna have a new moon in Gemini.
Okay.
I
So somewhere early June.
Yes, yes, I had to remind myself what month we're in. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, me too. It's like early May is
So
already
new
gone.
moons, I know,
Mhm.
so new moons are a time of setting and planting our seeds. And our seeds represent our intentions, what we would like to have come to fruition, and what we would like to essentially manifest. New moons represent a clean slate. It's a time of literally just starting. It's not necessarily starting over, but just beginning. So with the new moon, which always has a more, I would say it has a favorable, positive energy about itself with the newness of it. And then we apply that Gemini energy, which again Gemini is not afraid to try. Gemini wants to explore, and that could be in any capacity. It doesn't have to be traveling all over the world. We can explore our own selves, even from the comfort of our homes.
Yes.
Um, it could be, it is whatever you wish it to be. I
Sure.
think
Explore your
that's,
backyard, explore your own feelings and emotions, explore your physical body through added movement, explore
yes,
anything you want.
yes.
Um, what are some, so we talk about new moon intentions. Are there, I don't really want to use the word rituals, but I'm going to use the rituals. Are there things that we can do to kind of better put out there what it is that we're looking to intend upon? Like, do you have any suggestions on how one might set an intention, or what something someone might do?
Yes. So a few ideas. One thing is right before bedtime, getting yourself into a more meditative state, taking very deep breaths. And as you feel yourself begin to relax, you can begin either to replay the day, but as you're replaying it, revise it the way that you would like it to be and the way that you would like your future days to be. So moving forward, how you would like it to look like. So if something undesirable happened during the day, shifting it in your mind. But as you do so right before you drift off to sleep, the mind is extremely potent during this time. And since you're beginning to relax, you don't have as much judgment. Your nervous system is also starting to settle in and be calmer. There's not as much energetic resistance there. So as you start to literally paint a picture using your imagination, especially during a new moon time. Now, we can do this anytime. I would say it would be wonderful if we can do it every day. But especially, let's say the eve of a new moon or on that day that the moon is, considered a new moon, to be able to do that is extremely powerful for planting and setting our seeds. I would also say, again, with the idea of movement, if possible, especially if we're thinking about the new moon being in Gemini. And if possible, having this movement outside. So perhaps taking off your shoes and whatever resonates with you. If it's stretching, taking deep breaths, really feeling the earth beneath your toes, and thinking thoughts of things that you're grateful for that you already have. Because when you focus on the things that feel good that you already have, that can only multiply. When we're thinking of the good, it can only get better. Um, it could also be dancing and not having perhaps any specific routine, but just dancing. Shaking can also be a way of releasing stored emotion. And also, it's a very freeing, I would say, like style of movement as well, because there's not a lot of thought about how do I look right now, or even if there is, working through that as you're shaking and taking those old energies out so you can make way for something new. And of course, writing down what it is you would like to see during the new moon. It may sound cliche, but there is so much power that happens when we are writing. And even thinking about when we make a to-do list, we're writing down our intentions of what we intend to accomplish in that day, or whatever the length of time is. We're helping to cement it. And with each time that we put a check or a line through it, we've said that we have accomplished that. Like, it's happened.
Yeah.
Like, at one point it was a wish, and now it's a done deal. Like, it's happened.
Yeah.
So if we can begin to practice that a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be, it can be having like a lovely journal that you like and you feel good about. It could even be writing something down on a sticky note
Yeah.
of
Or
what you
napkin,
wish to see.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
action of writing is super important. And on a more personal level, it's telling your brain this is happening by writing it down. There's a lot of power in that. So during a
Yes.
new moon, that's a wonderful way to set your intentions and plant your seeds.
Awesome, awesome. So I go back, the visual to me is the dandelion, right? That becomes the seed pod that, becomes swept away by the wind, or my granddaughter and I, we call them wish flowers. And,
Mm,
we have all the wish flowers, and, we're helping to plant seeds.
yes, that's
So
beautiful.
so every intention that you set is really helping to plant seeds to, relieve suffering and to make the world a better place.
Beautifully said.
One, yeah, one little dandelion at a time.
Yes, yes.
So
True.
Well, thank you, Chrysanthe. This has been awesome, and looking forward to catching up with you again very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Sue, and thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yes, have a great day. Is there, if someone wants to do a birth chart with you or a birth chart reading, is there some way to get in touch with you?
Yes, so I have an email address. My email address is I'll spell it out, but it's santhessoul@gmail.com, and that's spelled SANTHESSOL at gmail.com.
Perfect.
And I also have a website, and you can find me under astrologicalservices.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again and have a great one.
Thank you so much. Bye.